In Texas, the road is part of who we are. From Dallas traffic to Hill Country back roads, you need coverage that keeps up. At Northwest Insurance Agency, we're proud to serve Texans with the best home, auto, and business insurance paired with honest rates, real protection, and local agents who understand life around here. Call us for a quote at 1-855-887-5656 or visit us at nwagencies.com.
This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody.
1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast presented by Northwest Insurance Agency. Appreciate Mark Villasana and his crew for supporting us. It is Thursday. It is a perfect weekend, Masters weekend. Hope you guys enjoy it. SMU football back on the field on Friday and Saturday after having a little bit of a layoff this week as they get ready for that final push to April 25th, that private spring showcase that they're going to do for season ticket holders, family, friends, things like that, keeping it really tight-knit on the Pettis practice fields in just 2 weeks to cap spring ball. And, of course, the transfer portal window opens next week. We've got a lot to talk about on that front in the coming days. We'll do a lot of that. But I do want to spend a lot of time on SMU basketball, both men's and women's, as SMU did introduce Adia Barnes as the new women's basketball coach on Wednesday. We were there covering it, got to meet her, got to meet one of her future SMU Mustangs, Jazzy Gibson, from Duncanville High School just down the road. She's really excited. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But first, I do also want to introduce a new podcast partner for the On the Pony Express podcast, and that is Ames Collision over on Mockingbird. Really excited about our partnership with Ames. They are a full-service collision center, so they will help you out no matter what happens to your car. They can service all European brands, so that's important to know. Eddie and Olga over there are taking over and running the show. You can give them a call, 469-661-3506. If you're a listener to the On the Pony Express podcast or an SMU fan, they're going to give you $75 off your repair, or you can apply that to your deductible as well. They've got a 24/7 towing service available. From auto collision repair, bumper repair, minor scratch damage, and hail damage, they can make sure that the repairs are quality and give you exceptional customer service. And their commitment to their clients, sets Ames Collision Center apart. So really excited to partner with them. Gives us a little bit more of a Dallas presence on the collision repair front. And you can find them on Mockingbird, right in the design, right near the medical district there near Love Field. So 1912 West Mockingbird is their address. So give them a call today, Ames Collision Center, and they can help get your car in and out and repaired. So they've got a lot of before and after pictures on the website as well, amescollisioncenter.com. All right, SMU did introduce Adia Barnes as its new women's basketball coach on Wednesday. And this was as Damon Evans, the new SMU AD, called it, a moment that SMU fans will look back on and say, this is the moment that women's basketball at SMU changed. And he touted the unparalleled support that they're going to give Adia Barnes. And Adia Barnes said, afterwards, she of course got asked, why leave your alma mater where you played, Arizona? You advanced to a national championship game a few years ago. You had season ticket holders, you had good crowds. And she just said, it was time. And she feels like, she wasn't getting the support that she needed there to be successful in this new day and age of NIL and the transfer portal and all of that. And she felt like Damon Evans, knowing him, knowing how he supports women's basketball, that was what made it really a no-brainer once the opportunity came together to go ahead and make the move to Dallas. And I've got a few takeaways on her opening press conference. I think, number one, it's apparent that she views the support that Dallas can give her as a driving force behind the revenue necessary to put together strong rosters from an NIL perspective, from a revenue sharing perspective. And obviously SMU is a private school. I would be interested to know if there is some sort of agreement in her deal tied to producing revenue for the school through season tickets. And she talked a little bit about that with us when we had our media breakout session where, and it's really interesting, honestly, where she pointed out that they had, somewhere around 300, 400 season ticket holders at Arizona when she first got the job. And they built up to well over 1,000. They had 8,000 people. They sold it out when they had certain games. So they really ended up having a nice support system there. But she mentioned that when you look at the season tickets and you look at adding up that number of season tickets and how, if people support with season tickets, you can make millions of dollars for the program. And then I believe, you can kind of have a little bit of a share with that, and that helps support the program. So let's say SMU sells season tickets, and I can pull up the email here as I'm talking, but some rough math here. If SMU can sell, 1,000 season tickets for women's basketball, and you sell them at $300 a pop, you're looking at $300,000 right there in season tickets. Now, SMU sells its courtside plus package at $150, I believe, and then you can get season tickets for $100 a pop. So there is some things to be worked out. Maybe it's more of a moving in volume and things like that. But that's where you can get up into the millions if you can, build a solid season ticket base. And then you have the Dallas market where if Adia Barnes can, and I had a conversation with somebody about this yesterday, and it's very similar to Andy Enfield and SMU basketball in a way. There is all the reasons why Adia Barnes is excited about SMU and the city of Dallas and the sports town and all of those things are great. But there is also a lot to do. There's the Mavs, there's the Stars, there's, Dallas Cowboys football on Sundays. And I'm 99% sure women's basketball plays a lot on Sundays because the ACC men's gets the Saturday draw. It's funny. It's interesting that SMU, when they were in the AAC, was flipped. But you have a base that if you can get a star player, if you can get somebody who transcends, women's basketball, or if you have somebody that completely changes the mindset of whether or not people are going to go out and watch SMU women's basketball, a Paige Buckets, for example. I know that's not her last name, but she gets buckets. She's going to be the number one pick in the draft. She's going to be part of the Dallas Wings, which, of course, is another big draw, having the WNBA here in Dallas. You need a player like that to move not only season tickets, but to get butts in seats and produce revenue. And that is something where Adia Barnes really needs that to happen, I think, in her future, to not only build a competitive team and have that type of a game-changing player, but it will help put butts in seats. And I think it's something that Andy Enfield and this staff are working toward as they build out their recruiting of high school players, as the NIL piece of the transfer portal gets, we'll see like what happens with SMU men's basketball. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I think Adia Barnes just sees this city, sees this university, sees the commitment that Damon Evans and David Miller and the rest of the supporters for SMU basketball as a whole want to have in Moody Coliseum. And they do see it as an opportunity to maybe produce a good bit of revenue, where that revenue can obviously be shared with Adia Barnes and her staff to go out and recruit. But it can also be maybe a program that is hot enough to, support itself, to be a difference maker. And to do that, you have to invest, and you have to invest. And she made no bones about it when she was talking with us. She's probably the first coach. I mean, just off the top of my head, when it came to SMU, major sports or just even sports that I've talked with, where she used the term buy. You go out and you buy a player, and it's like, wow. It's refreshing, that transparency when it comes to how you have to build out rosters today. Sometimes coaches use the term, go out and acquire or go out and, add a transfer. But I mean, it is a transactional sport right now, especially basketball. And it is so apparent with the money getting tossed around on the men's side. Well, the women's is no different. It's just on a different level. And I asked Adia Barnes, I said, how much has it changed? The beginning days of the portal and then adding NIL and things like that. And she said it is so much more transactional. It's totally different. Whereas in the past, she said we'd recruit somebody as they were, an eighth grader or ninth grader, or they'd come on campus or what have you. And then they don't, you might lose the recruiting battle, but in many cases you'd win it because you had relationships, you built them over time, they've been around your program, they'd be very comfortable. Now it's just so different because it is so transactional. So I thought that was really interesting, just how transparent she was about the overall positioning of women's basketball, and of course the transfer portal and the NIL piece that is impacting it right now. So I don't know how this tenure is going to go. I don't pretend to sit here in front of you and be a women's basketball savant by any means, but she worked quickly. They've added nine new players, and she said we expect to add 3 or 4 more. I was told after the fact that they expect to have a huge recruiting week next week with players coming on campus. And before we kind of move on, I do want to mention, Jazzy Gibson. If you watch the press conference that SMU had, I asked her, I said, hey, how important is it to be in the Dallas area when it comes to recruiting and to get a player that right off the bat can be the face of a program and the face of Dallas recruiting? And Jazzy Gibson, which I didn't know at the time, of course, getting used to, this newfound interest that SMU fans have in women's basketball with this, shot in the arm. Jazzy Gibson was actually sitting behind me, and she said, Adia Barnes said, well, I can't talk about her, which is a whole nother thing. But, it's so important. And it used to be that she had to get on a flight. She had to get on a flight to go recruit. Now she can just recruit the Dallas area. And then also, on top of that, she can get to Europe quicker. And her husband, Salvo, is from Italy. That's where they met when she was playing over there. And it's funny, she said she recruited him back over the States. So, everybody should trust her recruiting to get an Italian to leave Italy to come to the States. But it's easier to get to Italy and the European side of things from Dallas, of course, than it is Arizona. So overall, talked to Jazzy Gibson after the press conference, and she just said that the coaching staff makes her feel so comfortable. And the interesting thing, and trust me, we're wrapping up here on this, but we're not going to make it an indictment on Toyelle Wilson. They had issues clearly, but I asked Jazzy Gibson, I said, have you been on an SMU visit? It's right up the road. And she goes, no. All they did was went to a game that is free tickets or whatever that they got as a team, and they did it once. Here's a young lady who signed with Arizona and played on former Maverick Jason Terry's AAU team and hadn't really been recruited, and led Duncanville to a state championship last year and hadn't been recruited by the staff, which is wild. And now we're still looking to kind of confirm, see where Sanaya Richardson, another 4-star prospect, what kind of her situation is going forward when it comes to SMU. And we'll kind of see what happens there. But they went out and immediately added a Duncanville player who was signed with Arizona in Jazzy Gibson. And she just said the comfortability of the staff made it a no-brainer. I mean, she didn't even take a visit to SMU. Their first time really driving around the campus was Wednesday at the press conference. Just wild. So, but she will be a key piece for this future. She's a Duncanville standout. She's originally from New Mexico, but she brings some grit, some toughness to the front court. So that's kind of it. We talked a little bit about the women's basketball additions that they added. I missed a couple, but look, we'll let the roster kind of play out. They are on a heater here, adding players, and honestly, they're certainly on our radar, and we're keeping up with it as best we can as SMU continues to address its roster and completely overhaul it in general. But it was a good first impression by Adia Barnes. She's very transparent. I think she'll get the hang of the whole, press conference thing. It seems like she, is good with the media and things like that. So as far as just adjusting to all the talking points that she can have as SMU's women's basketball coach as well. So really interested to see how it all plays out. She feels like they'll be competitive quickly. She doesn't feel like necessarily win a national championship in year one, but she feels like she has the support to make it happen and turn this around like Andy Enfield and his staff turned it around. So before we go any further, do want to talk to you guys about Minion. What a restaurant, right up in Plano on Preston Road, just south of the HEB. It has been there for decades. Nick Nator and his family, former SMU offensive lineman, have built up one of the most exquisite menus and just environments in the restaurant business in Dallas. And it just has an incredible feel and ambiance in that restaurant. You sit at the bar, you have dinner service. They serve dinner 7 days a week. So make sure you pick a date night or pick a really nice business dinner or go out with friends or family and enjoy it. They have an incredible wine selection and, of course, brunch on Sundays as well, starting at 10:30. So make sure you check out Minion. You can make reservations on Open Table and support an SMU owned restaurant in Minion. So, gosh, it just makes me hungry every time we play their highlights on YouTube. So appreciate Minion for their partnership with the On the Pony Express podcast. So we continue on. SMU basketball is not done in the transfer portal as well. SMU is nearing, from what I understand, agreements with some key players to bring them back. BJ Edwards, the single season steals leader for SMU basketball, did announce that he is returning to the program for next season. And don't be surprised if Boopy Miller, the point guard, is all ACC, and Samet Yigitolu, the 7-footer from Turkey, is back again next season. Andy Enfield and his staff, their goal is to build a program and to build it out and develop players and push them to that next level. That is what they want to do. That's why they have a four-man recruiting class that is highly touted, best in program history in a long time. And then you've got a Brown transfer in Nana Owosu Anane, who can kind of help in that 4-man spot, maybe play out at the 3 a little bit, add some rugged rebounding. But what they found, of course, with this program this year is they built a roster that tied for 4th in the ACC. Of course, end up being 6th seed in the ACC tournament, lost that critical game, 4 seeding to Florida State, kind of the worst of the worst where you draw the final home game for Leonard Hamilton. But that's another story. But this year, the ACC is going to take a step up in basketball. You hire Will Wade if you're NC State. North Carolina is not going to be a program that wants to stay down or stay in that first or that Final Four into the NCAA tournament situation. They're going to continue to try and upgrade things. But of course, they're not above losing star players. Former 5-star Ian Jackson entered the transfer portal. Looks like he's going to head to St. John's or USC. The transfer portal numbers that are thrown around right now are just unbelievable. We're seeing $3-4 million being spent on players in the transfer portal. Toppin returning to Texas Tech. You have BYU paying up for Robert Wright. It is just an insane numbers that are being thrown around right now for these players. And I really am interested to see how it goes for SMU down the stretch. But here's what I can tell you. SMU is going to try to add 2 to 3 maybe, but probably 2 difference-making players. And how they get there, how they get to that level, it doesn't matter because we are in a world where everybody is spending in college basketball. and they're trying to get it in before the House settlement gets finalized. They're trying to, figure out how to best position their high major program in pretty much all these cases to do it big, to win big. And the ACC is investing. You're seeing Virginia kind of have a little bit of a step up. You're seeing, like I said, NC State is going to be a program to be reckoned with on the recruiting trail with Will Wade. We know that. That's kind of just all he does is assemble talent and doesn't really care how it comes together, quite frankly. And you have Duke, who's going to be a big spender again. So you have all of these programs that, are looking to continue their ascent up the mountain. If you're Duke, you had a heartbreaking finish to what was a really special team this season, but you also have programs that are looking to get back firmly into the mix. Syracuse is another one that I feel like is going to try to get back there as well. So it just is a super competitive conference. I know it was down this year. I think the ACC has really kind of said, look, we want to try to figure out what went wrong, get it right. And this is where SMU can come in and kind of say, okay, we lose AJ George, we lose Jarrell Colbert. Let's go out and replace them with players of even higher caliber. And AJ George headed to Cal State Bakersfield. Jarrell Colbert headed to McNeese State with a friend of the program, Bill Armstrong. Not that Bill, the other Bill, who I got to know a little bit covering LSU. But, they have quite the group of players that they're going after. But as you see players get linked to SMU, just know that they are working for high-level additions to this roster. They are in a really interesting spot here as they look to add two difference-making players, and that's all I'll kind of say. So the coaching staff is working really, really hard. I don't expect any visitors on campus as the dead period lifts this weekend, unless a couple people have led me astray on purpose to try to misdirect, which can happen from time to time. But what they do have is, I think, a situation where they're on the verge of maybe adding to this roster. And the key piece, of course, is getting Boobie Miller and Samet Yigitolu across the finish line to continue their development, get them back. That comfortability that they'll have with the program could make a difference. But what SMU knows is that the rest of the ACC is working to improve dramatically. And if that's the case, then you have to step up with that. And I think that's something that the Boulevard Collective, the coaching staff knows. And that's where I think the biggest thing, and I kind of alluded to this when talking about Adia Barnes, the biggest thing that this program can do is to get a difference maker that jacks everybody up around the fan base and says, I got to go watch that guy play. I got to see him before he's gone. And it's worth it in today's NIL era. It is worth it. These players that can completely change your program. Like, look, Braden Burry's 5-star guard commits to Arizona this week. Arizona was kind of the long favorite, but he took it to the spring. He kept it very under wraps. This was a competitive recruitment, especially in the NIL space. Now, would Braden Burry's completely change the view of your program? Maybe locally, like 5-star guard commits to SMU, maybe. But what can completely change your program is 5-star guard Ryan Hampton, an SMU legacy, committing to your program. And that's what SMU is working on over the coming months and potentially years on Ryan Hampton, if he doesn't reclassify, is putting together a program and an NIL package that can get him. And guess what? It'd be worth every penny. The excitement that Keith Frazier brought, McDonald's All-American back when Larry Brown was just getting here, that was a part of it. Even Emmanuel Mudiay didn't ever suit up for SMU, but that excitement being built around Emmanuel Mudiay worth it for SMU, right? Like, you have to get somebody that the Dallas community says, I got to go watch that guy, and SMU, if you compare an Austin Gooseby local player, a Dakari Spear, another top player in the state, and you can get those guys in, and then you get a Ryan Hampton, that changes your program. It makes your revenue go up. And that's what SMU needs to do next. Because Andy Enfield and his staff, they know how to manage these lottery pick types. They know how to manage these blue chip recruits. They've done it. They've done it together at USC. And so putting all of that together is what's next for this SMU basketball program. And it's a process. Because they got here, they needed to rebuild the roster. They did that. They finished tied 4th in the ACC. Good job. That is a really good job. There's a lot left on the table. There's a lot that they probably feel like, okay, woulda, coulda, shoulda. But they built a very competitive team in year one. And what they need to do now is they need to build on that. And how do you build on that? They need to find a difference-making player in the transfer portal and make it happen where people say, whoa, SMU just stepped up. Let's go watch those teams play. Do want to remind you guys we are presented by StatusJet as well. Make sure you check out StatusJet.com. Mention on the Pony Express for a discount on a round-trip flight or the code PonyUpACC. It is that time of year. Plan your summer vacation with family, friends, or more work trips. You can write it off, and there's no membership required at StatusJet. So go to StatusJet.com for more information and give them a call today to get the lowdown on what they can do for you, your family, your friends, your business. Now, as we turn our attention back to football, it's a really interesting time for SMU football, of course. And we talked about some of the transfer additions that have really, impressed, kind of given a stock report on those. Again, go to ontheponyexpress.com. We broke down every single one. We kind of, cherry picked some of them for the last podcast, but we have every single transfer broken down. I do want to talk about a couple of the standout stock risers of spring ball for me, just as a whole. And I want to start with one player in particular. And I want to say that Derek McFall has really looked the part at running back. I think his versatility is something that SMU is getting a true glimpse of this spring, because obviously he wasn't here last spring. He signed and then enrolled in the summer. But what he's brought to the table has been really, I think, something that can't be discounted when it comes to seeing it live. Like, sometimes in spring ball, you can say, oh, all right, that's good, great, good job there. It's spring, whatever. But we've really seen Derek McFall be used in so many different ways by SMU that the excitement around him, as John Rothstein would say, is palpable. I mean, it's a game-changing type of player that SMU has in its backfield, and it's because he can do so many different things. If he picks up pass protection well enough, we're going to be in good shape watching Derek McFall make plays. But what he can do is he can absolutely catch the ball out of the backfield and do it like Brashard Smith. SMU motions out Brashard Smith, runs a go route. SMU runs a Brashard Smith out on a wheel route. Those are all things that can happen with Derek McFall. He's very comfortable doing it. He's played wide receiver. He played at Tyler High School and did it very well. But what he also has shown the ability to do is break the big one. And he's gotten a little bit bigger. You can tell he's put in the work in the offseason. He's got another, May, June, July, get ready for the spring or for the fall and get in shape even more to carry that load, to shoulder that load. I'm really excited about Derek McFall. I think he's got all the potential oozing out of him, and he's been really exciting to watch in spring ball and just kind of do it all, quite frankly. So Derek McFall has been a big stock riser for me over the course of the spring, and SMU looks like they've got a good one in Derek McFall. Another stock riser for me is going to be PJ Williams. And at the right tackle position, you wish that in a way you could just flip him over the left side and he would be, that dude anchoring your offensive line. But he just looks a little bit more comfortable on the right side overall. And I asked Aaron Justice, I said, let's, you know, uh, let's talk about PJ Williams and kind of maybe why he hasn't been moved over to the left side. Well, there is that comfort, but there's also the thought that, okay, SMU knows what they have at the offensive line for the most part on the edges, right? Like they know Savion Byrd was, truthfully more than serviceable over the course of the season, right? He got banged around by those, really impressive defensive ends, and it became apparent he is not necessarily an elite left tackle by any means. But at right tackle, you had PJ Williams, who really did an incredible job throughout the season. I think his game has even taken a step up, compared to last season. I mean, he just looks like somebody that is very comfortable in year 2 in that spot. He looks like he's, probably a top 3 player on this entire team. If you say Kevin Jennings is your, 1, 2, or 3 player, he is. Regardless of what you think of some of the turnovers and those that happened, he is that guy. Whether you think Isaiah Wacobia or an Ahmad Moses is right up there, the couple other players that could be in the conversation, a Cam Smith, the Turbo, players like that. But PJ Williams is right there. He is that good. He's been that dominant in spring ball. Really been impressed with him overall. He just seems very patient out there on the edge and has done a great job in drills and protecting the quarterback and being able to win one-on-ones and things like that. So PJ Williams has been a big stock riser for me when it comes to this program. So we'll see how it goes with him on the right side this year, but all things look really, really good overall. But when you get to the defensive side of the ball, I think another stock riser is really Alex Kilgore. And we talked about him early, day 1, day 2. He had a pick. He had a pass breakup. He was all over the place when we were in there watching some team stuff. And he's continued that high level of play. Alex Kilgore, we've been a fan from day 1 of his. Even back when he was in high school, we kind of said, we think he's the best linebacker on that Katy Paytow team. And that was a program that had another guy signed with A&M and be kind of more highly rated, highly thought of. We pushed for Alex Kilgore to be a 4-star. I think this is the year that he fully breaks out as that star player on the defense for SMU. He's playing next to Zakai Barker, who's, really, really good linebacker in his own right. But I think Alex Kilgore, not having Ahmad Walker, not having Kobe Wilson out there, has really allowed him to kind of grow into this just kind of a monster player. Like, he is getting the ones. He's getting those 1 first team reps. And it is allowing him to play, obviously, more reps, but really make and show his impact. And I just think he's going to have a huge season. If you're looking at a player to replicate the production that Kobe Wilson had, could very well be Kilgore. Could be Zakai Barker, but Kilgore's size, his mindset is just so honed in right now. I'm really, really looking forward to seeing how he plays out this season and how he steps up into that leadership role for SMU this year on the defense. But before we get to our last standout, do want to remind you guys we're also presented by the Thomas Auto Group. Appreciate the Thomas Auto Group for their support, of course, and head up 75 McKinney. Check out the Thomas Promise today. Mention on theponyexpress.com and get pre-owned and new vehicles for employee pricing. So can't beat that. Great deal going on. Make sure you check them out, thomasautogroup.com. I think Deuce Harmon, the cornerback who transferred in from Texas A&M last year, and quite frankly, it was not a spring to remember for him. It was oh my gosh, SMU is going to have to maybe go out and get another transfer corner because Deuce Harmon has not picked it up. He's not picked up the culture. He's not picked up the playbook. He's not picked up any of those things. This year, he looks night and day more comfortable. He looks night and day more bought in to the program. He looks very serious, very businesslike out there. Everything that I've seen from Deuce Harmon has been impressive overall. So I think he's poised to step into that true corner 1 role, that he kind of shared Brandon Crosley, Jalen Davis Robinson, and Deuce Harmon. This year, it's going to be Deuce Harmon, Jalen Davis Robinson. They're going to have Marcellus Barnes at one point. They're going to have to find somebody to really step up beyond that. Can it be a Speedy Nettles? Can it be AJ Davis? Or do they move maybe somebody around a little bit and get them out there? But Deuce Harmon has really stepped up, been very impressed with him. So, and before we kind of close out with some closing thoughts on things, do want to also remind you guys to, again, check out Northwest Insurance Agency and give them a call. Mark Villasana, his entire team can help you find out if you're paying too much for insurance. Give them a call, 214-352-5656, or email them info@nwagencies.com. They're revamping the website. They're going to get a fresh look up there. Really excited about that as well. Show you guys that on the podcast. They've been huge supporters for us. So make sure you show them some love. Northwest Insurance Agency. All right. Closing things out here on the recruiting side of things. Getting closer here to a key decision. I do want to talk about him for just a second. Tiki Hala, the big Bastrop defensive lineman, who is one of the most sought after guys in the country. He was on campus last week for spring practice. Big target for SMU. Notre Dame is also the other finalist here. He is going to announce a decision on May 10th. He is expecting to go to Notre Dame this weekend. He then turns around and comes back to SMU the first weekend of May for an official visit. This is a huge moment for SMU in this 2026 recruiting class. And the Irish have been in a strong position here for Tiki Hala. He picked up an on-3 RPM pick from Mike Singer, our Notre Dame insider, who does a great job over there. They really cover Notre Dame well, built up an incredible brand over the years. But Tiki is somebody that I think is very keen on relationships. And SMU hired Jake Lange, who has done an incredible job building relationships across the state of Texas. He was with the University of Texas for a number of years, built up a really good rapport with a lot of top prospects that they ended up getting at Texas. And when you look at Tiki, this is a key relationship to watch. And SMU's kind of hung around in this recruitment, just really kind of just stayed the course overall and has hung in there. And they've started to edge out USC. They've now really positioned themselves right there. SMU, Notre Dame, who's going to win out? Who's going to get Tiki Hala? And it would not be surprising if SMU won this battle, but Tiki keeps things close to the vest. I think it's a really interesting recruiting battle that SMU is in right now for Tiki Hala, because he doesn't really let things out. And when you're in this position of trying to figure out, is this kid really going to go to SMU, or is he going to end up just being, committed to Notre Dame and kind of doing what, the Notre Dame side expects him to. This is going to be interesting. We were right here covering Jalen Cooper, taking that Notre Dame visit last year and, giving the Irish a shot, and SMU ends up winning out in that battle, just stood 10 toes down on their relationships and was able to get it done. And I think with SMU, they've just done a really nice job kind of continuing to recruit him, continuing to keep the push on. And I don't know, it makes a lot of sense for SMU to win this one, but we'll see. That's where it's never a dull moment in recruiting. You feel like you can position yourself really well. But I do want to make note that Tiki Hala's commitment date is literally a month away, May 10th. It will come right after his SMU official visit. He has other official visits scheduled for this summer. But, man, if you're reading the tea leaves here, that lines up pretty well for SMU. So we'll continue to track this one over the coming weeks as he makes his visit to Notre Dame this weekend And then we'll get back to SMU for that May 2nd visit weekend, which is a huge weekend for a lot of the top prospects on SMU's board. That'll be a big weekend. But before we go, I do also want to remind you guys that Under Armour Houston is on Sunday. We'll be down there covering that. Some key targets for SMU will be in action. So make sure you stay tuned to ontheponyexpress.com. $1 for your first week is all it takes to subscribe. So make sure you do that today. Subscribe to ontheponyexpress.com, and we will take care of you guys with all the scoop on the Mustangs. So lots to follow on the site as the transfer portal nears. Basketball recruiting heats up again with the dead period over. And of course, spring football, a couple weeks left in that. So make sure you're subscribed to ontheponyexpress.com. We appreciate all of you guys who have jumped on board with us. And we'll catch you next time on another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody.
Follow us on your socials on X at SMU on 3 and on Instagram at on3SMU.
And keep it locked to ontheponyexpress.com for more coverage.